I wasn't supposed to be home that night. The conference in Denver wrapped up early, and instead of sticking around for a pointless networking mixer and another overpriced hotel room, I caught the first evening flight home. I didn't tell Lauren I was coming, figured I'd surprise her. We'd been off lately, and I thought maybe this could be a gesture. Something to recalibrate whatever had been drifting between us. It was around 7:15 p.m. when the cab dropped me off in front of our house. Her car was already in the driveway, headlights off, tucked neatly into the spot she always preferred near the hedge. The porch light was on. That surprised me. She wasn't the forgetful type when it came to lights and locks. That's when I noticed the front door was ajar. Not kicked open or anything dramatic, just slightly unlatched. Enough that a strong gust of wind could have pushed it inward. But it wasn't windy. And the way it sat there, cracked open like someone left in a hurry or expected to come right back, it made my stomach knot in a way I didn't like. "Hello?" I called softly as I stepped inside, half expecting to hear her call out from the kitchen or upstairs. I heard music instead. Low-volume jazz, the kind she usually played during dinner parties. The kind she said helped people relax. But there was no dinner. No guests. Just silence. And that smell. Wine. And something else. The wine scent I recognized immediately, her favorite Merlot, the one from that Napa vineyard she ordered by the case when she got her bonus last year. But the other scent? That cologne? That didn't belong here. It was heavy, masculine, and way too refined for something picked off a Dr. store shelf. I knew cologne. I wore it when I needed to. This one had character, notes of spice, and something dark, expensive, maybe European. And it lingered in the hallway like its owner had been there not long ago. I turned the corner into the kitchen. 2 wine glasses sat on the marble island. One had lipstick on the rim, her shade, no doubt. The other had a clear smudge, like someone had taken a sip and wiped their mouth with the back of their hand. The bottle was open, nearly half empty, and still beaded with condensation. That alone might not have meant anything. Friends stopped by sometimes, sure. But it was the jacket that did it. Tossed casually into the deep basin of the farmhouse sink, soaking against the edge, was a navy blue blazer, definitely not mine. Slim cut. Textured. Designer. And when I picked it up out of reflex, the label practically shouted at me, boutique brand from Chicago. A small place we'd once visited together where everything cost more than it should and was designed to make you feel like you were just a little more important than the next guy. Why would Jordan, her supposed cousin, own a jacket like this? And why would he leave it soaking in our sink? The answer was already forming, but I hadn't even said a word yet. I heard the soft click of her phone being set down before I saw her. Lauren was sitting on the couch in the living room, dressed in a black cashmere sweater and slim jeans, barefoot, her hair down. Casual, confident. Like she was expecting me. She didn't jump up. She didn't look startled. She just turned slightly and gave me that same half-smile she always used when she was buying time to think. "Carter," she said. "You're home early." That's it. No hug. No rush to greet me. Just those 3 words delivered smoothly. I stepped closer. "Yeah. Flight got in early. Thought I'd surprise you." "Well, consider me surprised," she said, crossing one leg over the other and reaching for her wine. "Did everything go okay? Denver?" I nodded slowly, unsure of whether to sit or stay standing. "It was fine. Got out before the snow hit." She raised her glass. "Smart." I cleared my throat and gestured toward the kitchen. "Did you have someone over?" She blinked just once and then gave a small laugh. "Oh, yeah. Jordan stopped by. Last minute thing. He was flying out of O'Hare and had some time to K*LL before heading to the airport. You remember Jordan, right? My cousin?" I frowned. I thought he lived in Austin. He does. But he had some meetings here. He didn't want to wait in traffic, so he came by, had a glass of wine, and then took a rideshare to the terminal. Must have forgotten his jacket. Her voice didn't waver once. "Right," I said. "Well, that's convenient." She tilted her head. "Is something wrong?" I shook my head even though everything inside me screamed that nothing was right. "No," I said. "Just surprised. Like you said." I sat down in the armchair across from her. The music still played softly. She sipped her wine. Her phone buzzed once, screen facing down. That shift inside me, it was subtle but unmistakable. Like something old had snapped. Like I'd stepped into a version of my life that looked the same from the outside but was suddenly missing a crucial piece. Maybe trust. Maybe belief. I didn't accuse her. I didn't make a scene. I just watched her, wondering how long she'd practiced that story, how many other versions she had prepared just in case. And the worst part? She didn't even look nervous. Later that night, I sat in my home office, door closed, lights off, just the soft hum of the computer fan and the dull ache in my chest for company. I hadn't planned to go looking for anything. Not at first. But that calmness in Lauren's voice had echoed in my head on repeat. The way she'd explained the wine, the jacket, the scent of another man, all so effortlessly, like she'd done it before. I should have felt rage. I didn't. I felt cold, detached almost. Like my mind had quietly decided it didn't trust her anymore and was preparing to prove itself right. I opened my browser and typed in the gallery's name where Lauren said she worked. I'd heard her mention it a dozen times over the last few months, late-night meetings, inventory reviews, curating sessions. It was an art space in the West Loop that specialized in modern sculpture. She used to love working there, especially when events were happening. But lately, it felt like the gallery had become a revolving excuse. Their site hadn't been updated in months. A banner across the top read, "Due to ongoing renovations and restructuring, our team has transitioned to remote operations until further notice." The update was dated nearly 4 months ago. Remote. So why had she been dressing like she was going out to meet donors or clients or some fictional artist every other night? I clicked over to their social media pages. Same story, no events, no new posts, no check-ins from staff. Just a long silence. I opened her shared calendar. Hers was mostly empty except for recurring gallery entries, vague, unspecific, and more frequent than ever. And I noticed something else. She had removed the recurring dinner reminders we used to set together. I hadn't noticed when it happened, but now it felt symbolic. As if our routines, like our relationship, had quietly been overwritten. And then I remembered something small but suddenly loud in my memory. 2 weeks ago, we'd gone to dinner at a downtown place called Ruel's. A moody, upscale spot we picked on a whim, at least I thought we had. I remember asking if she'd ever been, and she said no, insisted it was new to her. But when we walked in, the waiter greeted her by name. Not just a polite hello, but a welcome back, Miss Ellis. I remember watching her freeze for a fraction of a second before she smiled and played it off. Oh, must be from that gallery event a few years ago. I believed her at the time. Or maybe I chose to. I turned to my phone and scrolled through our old text messages, suddenly viewing them like evidence. Most of her replies from the last month had grown shorter, more mechanical. When she texted that she'd be home late, the messages always felt careful, worded like she'd reread them a few times. That wasn't how she used to talk to me. And then there was her wedding ring. She'd stopped wearing it a few weeks ago, claiming her fingers had been swelling, some vague excuse about a reaction to hand soap. But her fingers never looked irritated. The ring sat untouched in a ceramic bowl on the dresser like an artifact. She also started avoiding selfies. For someone who once documented everything, latte foam art, sunsets, even her reflections in shop windows, she'd grown camera shy. If I asked to take a picture together, she'd deflect, laugh it off, or say she wasn't in the mood. And yet, her phone buzzed more often than mine. Always face down. Always silenced. Once at 3 in the morning, I saw the screen light up from her nightstand. She stirred, rolled over, and quickly flipped it over before I could even glimpse the notification. Who texts at 3 in the morning? I stood up and walked quietly to her bedroom. The door was half closed, the room dimly lit by her bedside lamp. She had fallen asleep, curled on her side, her phone tucked neatly beneath the pillow. I just stood there, looking at her. Not in anger, not even in sadness. Just observation. Like I was examining a painting I thought I understood, only to realize I'd missed the entire point. I walked back to my office and sat down. My thoughts were spinning but slow, controlled. It wasn't one moment that broke me. It was the collection of them. The late nights. The missing ring. The familiarity at that restaurant. The lies wrapped in calm voices. The cologne in our hallway. The half-full wine glass meant for someone else. Every single one was a puzzle piece. And for a long time I had kept shoving those pieces back into the wrong picture, insisting they didn't fit. Now they did. Perfectly. I'd been played. Not in some dramatic soap opera way, but in the quietest way possible. That was the worst part. It hadn't been sudden. It had been systematic. Subtle. Polite. I could almost admire it in a twisted way. She hadn't yelled. She hadn't changed her tone or picked fights. She just distanced herself inch by inch. She built a version of herself beside me that operated on autopilot while the real version had moved on without saying a word. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there with a legal pad, jotting down everything I could remember. Not to confront her. Not yet. But because something inside me had changed and I knew, from this point on, nothing would be the same. 2 days passed. I didn't bring up the wine. Or the jacket. Or the Jordan story. I simply carried on, went to work, cooked my own meals, made idle conversation. I wanted her to feel the silence. I wanted her to think I'd bought the lie. Because the second you let someone know you're onto them, they start erasing footprints. And I needed those footprints. I wasn't sure what I was looking for until I got a phone call from my younger brother, Mark. It was a short call. 32 seconds. Carter, he said, voice tight. I didn't know if I should say anything, but I saw Lauren last night. I froze. Saw her? Yeah. At a bar downtown. The Slate Lounge. I was meeting a client for drinks and I wasn't spying or anything. I didn't even know you were out of town again. I wasn't, I said slowly. Well, then I don't know what she was doing there, man. But she wasn't alone. The words settled like a rock in my chest. He continued. She was with some guy. Tall. Gray blazer. Slick hair. Looked like he walked out of a GQ ad. They were close, Carter. Real close. Holding hands. Laughing. And then they kissed. Not a cheek kiss. Full on. And not like it was new. Like it was normal for them. I didn't speak for a few seconds. I'm sorry, Mark said quietly. I thought you should know. I thanked him. I don't remember hanging up. I sat there in the kitchen, the faucet dripping behind me, the same wine bottle still perched beside the sink, now gathering dust. She came home late that night. Said something about traffic on the expressway. She didn't look guilty. She looked efficient. The way someone does when they've already played out every move on the board. I watched her brush her teeth. Wash her face. Crawl into bed beside me and sigh like she'd had a long day. I stared at the ceiling. I didn't say a word. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I slid open the top drawer of my desk and pulled out a small black box I hadn't touched in years. Inside was the tiny remote for the house's camera system, the one installed years ago after a string of break-ins in the neighborhood. She'd forgotten it existed. Most people do. The system was old, but functional. I pulled up the cloud account tied to it, password still the same, Lake House 2015. Our honeymoon destination. I clicked into the most recent footage and began scrubbing through the last 48 hours. At 11:43 p.m. the night before, I saw Lauren arrive home. She was alone. Or so I thought. But 3 minutes later, the side camera flickered on. A man appeared. Tall. Gray blazer. Confident gait. He looked like the kind of guy who adjusted his shirt cuffs even when they didn't need adjusting. He didn't knock. Lauren opened the side gate for him. She smiled, soft, warm, familiar. They walked around the back of the house and entered through the patio doors. No hesitation. The camera didn't cover the inside of the house. But the foyer camera picked them up crossing the living room. They were laughing. She touched his arm. He leaned close. She kissed him once before they disappeared up the stairs. 10 minutes later, the upstairs hall camera flickered as lights shut off. Bedroom curtains drawn. Silence. I stared at the screen for a long time, the faint hum of my laptop growing louder in the room's quiet. There it was. Not a suspicion. Not a theory. Not a bad feeling. Just reality. Undeniable, unforgiving, documented. I saved the footage to a flash drive and slipped it into the back of my desk drawer. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there empty. Not because of the betrayal, but because of how meticulously she had built the lie. How easily she had said Jordan. How naturally she had slipped into our bed afterward, curled against me like she was still my wife. When someone lies with panic, there's at least an ounce of shame. But when they lie with grace, that's how you know it's not their first time. I took the day off work. I said I had a migraine, which wasn't a lie. My head felt like it had been split into two separate people, the one who'd believed in us and the one who now saw everything for what it truly was. I drove around for a while. Stopped at a park we used to walk through in the early days. I sat on the same bench where she once told me she wanted to grow old with me. She had her feet in my lap. A blanket around her shoulders. We were watching kids throw leaves at each other and she'd smiled and said, someday that'll be us chasing after kids who'll never know how lucky they are. I remember kissing her hand that day and saying, as long as we're chasing them together. Funny how memories echo back like ghosts when the foundation cracks. When I got back home, she was in the kitchen again. Same wine. Same music. Same smile. How's your head? She asked. Better, I replied. She stepped closer. Want to watch something tonight? There's that new documentary. I think I'm just gonna read, I said. She nodded and returned to her phone, thumbs dancing over the screen like she had something more important to say elsewhere. I wanted to scream. To ask her who he was. To throw the wine bottle against the wall and demand the truth. But I didn't. I wanted her to think she'd won. Because I wasn't planning a confrontation. I was planning an exit. And I wanted to make sure she didn't see it coming. That night, I watched her sleep again. Her back was to me, shoulders rising and falling in that slow, rhythmic way. And I realized something simple but devastating: I didn't love her anymore. I loved the woman I thought she was. But that woman was gone. She probably never existed. The morning after the footage, I woke before sunrise. Lauren was still asleep beside me, curled into the duvet with one arm flung across the pillows. She looked peaceful, almost innocent. But I knew better now. I got dressed quietly and left the house without saying a word. I drove to a cafe across town where nobody knew me, sat in the back corner, and opened my laptop. There were no tears left. No tremble in my hands. I felt something colder, focused, calculated. I wasn't going to confront her with anger. I wasn't going to plead for answers. That wasn't me. I was going to take everything back, everything she'd used, everything she took for granted. Lauren thought I was just some guy with a modest income and a boring job. And I let her believe that. I let the world believe it. I liked being underestimated. But I had secrets too. I logged into my administrative dashboard for Vanta Wellness, the network of upscale spas quietly thriving across 3 states. Most people thought it was owned by a former fitness influencer and a board of faceless investors. That was only partly true. The influencer was just a brand figure. The money, the strategy, the patents, it all came from me. I'd built it from scratch, piece by piece, funneling ownership through multiple proxies and shell companies. I never wanted the spotlight. I just wanted the freedom that came with it. Lauren had unknowingly worked for Vanta once, consulting on branding for a side branch we launched last year. She thought it was freelance. She had no idea her paycheck came from me. Today, I revoked her access. I cut her from every vendor platform, every retainer, every future deal. Her profile was wiped clean by 7:45 a.m. She wouldn't know it until her emails started bouncing. Next, I contacted our financial advisor. The joint accounts were easy enough to dissolve. Most of them were backup anyway, shells meant to show face for mortgage brokers or vacations. The real assets? The investments, the trust fund tied to the house, the royalties from the wellness app? All mine. And all traceable to documents she'd never bothered to read. The car she drove every day, her prized Audi coupe, was leased through Vanta. Technically, company property. She used it like it was hers. Not anymore. I scheduled a repossession pickup for the following Monday. Quiet. Professional. She'd come outside and find it gone. No notice. No fight. Just absence. Then I called Daniel, my attorney. A quiet, methodical man with a memory like a steel trap and no patience for drama. It's time, I told him. I assume we're activating the prenuptial strategy, he asked, voice cool. Yes. And I want the asset review fast-tracked. I don't want her touching a cent beyond what she's earned. She'll be blindsided, he said. Good, I replied. She should be. The prenup had been her idea, ironically. Her family was protective, and back then I didn't look like much on paper. She wanted to safeguard her future earnings, assuming she'd outpace me in success. I agreed without hesitation. Now it worked in my favor. Irony gift-wrapped. By the afternoon, I'd contacted a locksmith and a security contractor. New door codes. New entry logs. Surveillance updated. The house, still legally mine, would soon be functionally inaccessible to her without my approval. That night, Lauren returned home in her usual effortless grace. She slipped off her shoes, poured herself a glass of wine, and joined me on the couch. You were quiet this morning, she said. Didn't sleep much, I replied. A lot on my mind. She nodded, completely unaware that her entire infrastructure was already crumbling beneath her. Over the next few days, she noticed little things. First, the corporate email stopped working. Then her bank card declined at a boutique downtown. She assumed it was a glitch. She called the number on the back of the card and was met with a temporarily restricted notice. On Thursday, she came home with a furrowed brow. Have you been having banking issues? I shook my head. No. Why? My card wouldn't go through today. Twice. And my Zelle account shows pending. Maybe fraud protection, I offered. She nodded slowly but didn't speak. Friday morning, I called her employer. Not the gallery, that story had run its course. I called the company I knew she'd been moonlighting with, some boutique branding agency I'd quietly acquired through a holding firm a year ago. I want her contract closed out, I said. No severance, they asked. None, I replied. And make sure she doesn't see my name on any of the files. Lauren called me later that day, frustrated. I just got an email saying my contract's been canceled. No explanation. No reply. That's strange, I said. You want me to look into it? No, it's fine. I'll figure it out. But she couldn't. Because the walls were already closing in. Saturday morning, the final piece clicked into place. I sat at the kitchen table, an envelope beside me. Inside were divorce papers, neatly arranged, thoroughly outlined. Every clause, every protection, every boundary already reviewed. When she came downstairs, I handed them to her like I was passing over a dinner menu. "What's this?" she asked, laughing nervously. "You know what it is." Her face changed. The blood drained from her cheeks. Her hands trembled as she opened the packet. "Carter, what is this?" "I'm dissolving the marriage. Effective immediately." "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "Wait, this isn't." "You lied," I said. "You brought someone else into our home. Into our bed." "I didn't." "I know," I interrupted, my voice flat. "I saw the footage." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. "There's nothing to explain," I said. "You already did that when you handed me a jacket that didn't belong and said it was your cousin's. You already explained when you came home reeking of cologne and tried to pass it off like I was imagining it." Tears welled in her eyes. "Please," she whispered. "Can we talk about this?" "We just did." I stood and walked past her, leaving the envelope on the table. She didn't chase me. By Monday morning, her car was gone from the driveway. The company came and picked it up before dawn. No alarm. No noise. I watched from the upstairs window. Lauren hadn't slept in our bed since Friday. She moved into the guest room, still clinging to some fantasy that she could salvage this. But there was nothing left to salvage. She tried calling, messaging, reaching out to mutual friends. But every channel had already been closed. Every rope cut. I didn't block her. I just stopped replying. Let her feel the weight of silence. Let her sit in the space where trust used to live. And let her realize this wasn't a reaction. It was a response. Calculated. Clean. Final. The days that followed were quiet. Not the tense, waiting for an explosion kind of quiet. Not anymore. This was the silence that comes after a storm has passed, when the air is still heavy but the worst has already happened. Lauren stayed in the guest room, still clinging to whatever scraps of denial she could gather. But I had moved on. I didn't yell. I didn't demand confessions. I didn't need her to cry or justify or beg. The truth was already behind us, and so was she. I spent more time outside the house. I went on long walks without direction, just my phone and the wind. I sat in cafes I used to avoid, parks I hadn't visited in years. And then, one morning, I found myself in front of a modest design studio tucked between a bakery and an antique bookstore. The sign on the door read, "Stitch Form Studio, Interiors by Amelia Grant." I hadn't said her name out loud in years. But there it was, pulling me backward and forward at the same time. Amelia. We had met almost a decade ago, back when I was taking night classes in architectural aesthetics for fun. She was my professor, barely older than me, brilliant in a way that didn't demand attention. She had this calm about her, like she didn't need to impress anyone. Just teach, share, create. We'd become friends. Nothing more. Not then. But I remembered her. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, in that quiet, understated way that only grows more powerful over time. I remembered her because she was real. Grounded. The kind of person who looked at you and actually saw you. I opened the door. A soft bell rang overhead. She was behind the counter, glasses low on her nose, tapping something into a tablet. She looked up and blinked once. "Carter," she said, like my name didn't quite make sense in her mouth after all these years. "Hi," I said. "Long time." Her smile came slow, like sunrise. "That's one way to put it." I don't know what I was expecting. I thought maybe I'd say hello and walk out feeling nostalgic or foolish. But instead, she set her tablet down and asked if I wanted coffee. We sat in the corner of the studio, 2 mugs between us. I told her everything. Not the graphic parts. Not the surveillance or the strategy. Just the bones of it. The betrayal, the wine glasses, the jacket in the sink. She listened the way she used to, as if nothing else in the world was more important than hearing you speak. When I was done, she didn't say, "I'm sorry," or "What a horrible woman." She just nodded once and said, "That must have hurt." It did. More than I'd let myself admit. But sitting across from her, I felt something settle in me. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not excitement. Not romance. Just steadiness. We kept meeting, sometimes at her studio, sometimes at a nearby cafe with terrible chairs and great espresso. There was no pressure. No expectations. Amelia wasn't trying to fix me. She wasn't offering motivational speeches or therapy in disguise. She was just there. And somehow that was enough. Lauren, meanwhile, had started unraveling. She emailed me 6 times in one day. The subject lines alone were a map of panic. Please talk to me. Let's fix this. You're making a mistake. I'm sorry. Please. Just one call. I didn't respond. She tried to call twice that week. Then came the text messages, long, rambling paragraphs about her confusion, her regret, how she never meant for it to go that far. She said she was getting help, that she'd cut him off, that the affair hadn't meant anything, that she had been in a fog. Funny how they always say that after the fact. Fog doesn't unzip jackets and climb into shared beds. Fog doesn't sneak past cameras and pull curtains shut. I didn't answer. The last text came on a Sunday afternoon. Just 5 words. Do you still love me? I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. Amelia and I began working on something new together. Started with an idea I'd been toying with for years. Transforming wellness studios into full creative retreats. A place where clients could work out, meditate, but also engage with design, color, spatial thinking. I pitched it like it was just a side project, but she saw through it immediately. You want to start over? She said one evening as we looked at fabric samples and sketches on her floor. Is it that obvious? It's not a bad thing, she said. You're allowed to want something different, something honest. We didn't kiss. Not then. That wasn't what this was about. But something shifted between us. A silent agreement. This wasn't about rebound. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about rebuilding something on solid ground this time. By now, Lauren had realized the money was gone. The joint accounts dissolved. Her access revoked. Her consulting gigs ended. She tried calling the gallery's board, only to find out she had been listed as inactive for months. Her illusion was breaking. She showed up one day at the front door. I didn't open it. I watched through the side camera as she stood there, eyes wide, hair tied back like she was trying to look younger, more vulnerable. She rang the bell, then knocked, then stood there waiting. Eventually, she left. I never heard from her again in person. A week later, I had a courier deliver a final packet. Updated divorce documents, a detailed asset statement, and a note that simply read, "Please direct all communication through my attorney." I kept the note short, because there wasn't much left to say. Amelia and I kept moving forward. She never asked about Lauren beyond the first few conversations. She never made me feel like a project or someone broken she needed to mend. She just accepted me as I was and as I was becoming. That was the thing about real people. They don't perform. They don't pretend. They just are. And when you've spent years with someone who built their life on rehearsed lines and curated moods, finding someone who simply tells the truth, even when it's hard, is like breathing clean air for the first time in years. I didn't need a replacement. I needed reality. And somehow I had found it again. It was a Thursday evening when Lauren came back for the last time. She had called twice that day, both times ignored. But I knew she'd come. People like her don't let go easily. Not because of love, but because of control. She stood at the door for nearly 5 minutes before I finally opened it. I didn't invite her in. Instead, I handed her 3 boxes, cleanly labeled. Her clothes, her personal items, a folder with documents she might need, passport copies, receipts, old photos I no longer cared to keep. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at the boxes like they were foreign objects. Then her eyes drifted to the folder on top. "These are," she asked. "Divorce papers," I said. "Everything's been reviewed and notarized. Just needs your signature." She blinked. "You're really doing this?" "I already did." She looked past me into the house. "Can we talk? Please?" "There's nothing left to talk about." Her voice cracked. "Carter, you can't just throw everything away." "I'm not," I said. "I'm giving it back to the person who broke it." Her face twisted, not in rage, but in desperation. Like she finally realized I wasn't bluffing. "Do you really think you can just erase me?" I looked her in the eyes. "I already did." There were no raised voices. No accusations. Just a quiet end. I closed the door before she could speak again. On the other side, she stood motionless for a moment, then picked up the boxes and left. No goodbye. No fight. Just silence. 6 months later, I was standing on the terrace of our newest studio in Maine. The ocean breeze carried the scent of pine and salt, and the horizon stretched wide and clean. Everything about this place felt like clarity. Amelia stood beside me, going over layout plans for a new creative wellness wing. Her approach was simple but inspired, nothing showy, everything with intention. We'd built this together. Slowly. Honestly. She never asked me to be more than I was. She never tried to fix what was never broken. I wasn't looking to replace Lauren. I wasn't chasing closure. I had simply stepped out of the fog and into a life that didn't require performance. Word had spread about the divorce. Some mutual acquaintances passed on updates about Lauren, how she had moved in with a friend, started using her maiden name again, found a junior role at a small agency. I didn't follow up. I didn't ask for more. I didn't need to. She'd faded into the background like a distant hum in a house you no longer live in. My world had changed, not with noise, but with purpose. For the first time in years, I wasn't treading water. I was walking forward. And behind me, the door had quietly closed. No vengeance. No revenge. Just freedom.